Have you pulled far away from a relationship where you used to be really close? Are you wondering if completely ending the relationship is the only way to protect yourself from being hurt again? In today's session, we're going to discuss 3 signs that your contract needs a redesign so that you can convert your conflict into connection and not destroy relationships that are simply going through growing pains. Are you ready to stop fighting and start loving again? What if I told you that the key to healing your broken relationship can be found at the intersection of law and love? I'm Judge Char, founder of Law for Love, and I restore justice to broken relationships through contract building, restructuring, and legal consulting that helps you convert conflict into connection that transforms your family, your community, and the world. What's the good word? Welcome to another week of love, relationship, and figuring out the bumps and the bruises of not always seeing things the same, not always understanding each other, not always able to really figure it out. And I have a very, very powerful story to share with you as we talk about these 3 signs that your contract may need restructuring, and want to share with you what one family in particular experienced in this particular situation. Now, the problem is that in our relationships, we have pain, right? Life is painful. Human beings are flawed. We make mistakes, we say the wrong things, we're not always consistent, we change with seasons, all kind of stuff is happening in relationships. The person that you met a year ago is not the same person today necessarily. The person who you married 10 years ago is not exactly the same person now. And so there's all of these changes, and then there's all of this pain that comes from the human experiences. And because being in connection and community with other human beings hurts, right? The tendency is to find ways to protect ourselves, find ways not to get got, find ways to create some kind of cushion between ourselves and the reality that people hurt. Like, human beings are a trip. And this is the problem. The problem is that for some of us, there is a compounding of all of life's experiences, all of the different people that have hurt you, all of the different people that have disappointed you. For some of us, it's like the exact same pattern. You open up, you have this great connection initially, and then you find that you get treated a certain way. uh, One person after the next person after the next person. And for many people, the tendency is, you know what? I'm gonna have to go ahead and guard my grill here and not let you hurt me. And the reality is that when you're dealing with human beings hurt. So there is this fear, right? That is at the root of what it means to get hurt. So that very first time you found out that the stove was hot, maybe you touched it inadvertently, or maybe you had an encounter with fire, and when you didn't know that fire hurt, you develop this healthy fear of things that can hurt you. Uh, when you were a little kid, you didn't understand why it was so important for you to look both ways, because there was this fear that your parents would have, that you would run out there and you would get hurt if you didn't know the right way to cross the street. Well, it's the exact same thing when it comes to our relationships. When we're hurt once, we develop this fear. Well, if you've been betrayed once, there is the fear of being betrayed. If you have been rejected, there is this fear of not fitting in or being accepted, or being a fear of being rejected. If someone has ever broken up with you, if you've ever been dumped, or if you were married and someone walked out on you, then there's also the fear of being abandoned. Anytime we experience pain, the natural result of pain is fear. And if anyone tells you, oh, I don't have fear, they're lying. Because the human condition is a world of fear. And these are just some of the big categories of fear in relationships that most people have playing. And these are apps that are running in the background of most of our interactions with one another. People wondering, hey, are you going to do me wrong? Are you going to hurt me? So when we look at the nature of human relationship and the nature of human connection and what is actually happening on a contract level, it's important for us to remember the essentials, right? What is making our contract? The contract, it involves two or more people who have a meeting of the minds. We mean the same thing, we're thinking the same thing, we have the same intentions and motivations, we're defining things the same. The meeting of the minds. This is the connection part of the contract. And then there's the give and take, or what we call consideration under the law. So these are the three elements. And the place where a redesign has to happen is in the area of the meeting of the minds. When we started out, we meant the same thing. When we started out, I thought we defined things the same way. When we started out, I thought we were both going in the same direction. I thought we both had the same GPS location. But along the way, we realized that maybe we really didn't mean the same, or maybe things have changed. Some people really struggle with change because of a fear of being hurt again. Some people develop this control, right? You want things to always be the same, you want things to be predictable. This is a fear of not being in control, because if you're not in control, you might get hurt again. And things change. There was this song back in the day. I don't remember if it was the 80s or 90s song, but it was seasons change, people change. And so because of our nature, because every single year we're going through seasons of the earth. We're going from winter to spring to summer to fall. The earth itself goes through seasons, and we as human beings, we go through seasons. And because we go through seasons, the meeting of the minds gets disrupted somewhere along the line, right? So let's talk about the three signs that you no longer have a meeting of the minds. In this conversation, I want to say that when I'm out here in these social media streets, one of the really, really big themes about the loss of a meeting of the minds, like loss of connection, relationships just coming into a place of conflict. There's tons of content out here that's like, oh, you don't need them. Oh, cut them off. Oh, they weren't for you. Oh, that season is over. I'm not talking about that particular type of situation. Do we outgrow friends? Yes. Do we come into places where we our goals change and the direction of our life changes, and so our circle of friends changes? Yes, that happens. But even in the way that I'm hearing a lot of people even talking about that, it's like it doesn't have to, even that type of meeting of the minds or changing of the meeting of the minds, it doesn't have to result in beef. It doesn't have to result in hard feelings. There can always be a meeting of the minds. As I have said before, sometimes the meeting of the minds is agree to disagree. We can agree to disagree that the path that you're taking is the right path for me. And we can agree to disagree that the path that I'm taking is the right path for you. Because if I'm not choosing the path that you're taking and you're not choosing the path that I'm taking, and we just not on the same path, Let's agree to disagree. But that doesn't mean we have to stop loving each other. That doesn't have to mean that we sit back and we're waiting to see something bad happen to you because we're no longer on the same path, or our adventure has changed because there's been a fork in the road for our relationship. So with reference to those type of parting of ways, that is not the type of situation that we're talking about right now. We are talking about a relationship that has come into a changing of the meeting of the minds, and the need is for a redesign. The relationship is going through growth pains, and the conversation and the changes that need to happen as a result of a shifting of position. That conversation, when you do it right, will actually make your connection deeper with one another and make your relationship more rewarding when you work through this. So this is specifically what I'm talking about. Not when you outgrow friends, but when there is just the tectonic plates have shifted and caused a little bit of an earthquake in your relationship. Remember, conflict is a signal that you have an opportunity to grow deeper, closer in your connection. So this is what we're talking about here. Number one is bitterness. In a lot of relationships, especially those of a closer nature. So when we're talking about your family relationships, we're talking about husband and wives, we're talking about parents and children, we're talking about siblings. In these relationships, there is often, because of the familiarity of the relationship, there is often an expectation that other people understand your needs, and other people understand your personality, and other people understand what it is that you're thinking and meaning. And so when there is a conflict here in the meeting of the minds, that you remain in a place of expecting them to know, or they remain in a place of expecting you to know. Or maybe there was one conversation where it was there was like a little bit of a reference to it, but not a direct confrontation. And this person continues to do something that hurts you. This person continues to do something that offends you. This person continues to act in a way that frustrates and irritates you. And because of the repetitive nature of them doing the same thing, that in your mind, they know I don't like that. In your mind, they know that this drives you up a wall, but they continue to do something that bothers you. And over time, the repetitive nature of the offense leads to an unforgiveness that settles in. And it settles in like uh, sewer water, and it begins to fester and turn into bitterness. And one of the ways that you can identify this is you have an exchange or words with the person that you're growing bitter towards. And during that confrontation, you might just quickly dismiss them. And when you walk away, you're talking under your breath, like, get on my nerves, I can't stand them. This is one way that you can identify bitterness. And this is one of the signs that it's time to like schedule a contract renegotiation, schedule a contract negotiation. Do not remain in a place where in your mind, you think the other person know. In your mind, you think this other person should already have adjusted their behavior. In your mind, they should have been got it together. And because of the repeated offense, you are now growing in a place of darkness, and you are feeling bitter. You are at a place where your response to the other person is unkind or abrasive or sarcastic, because of this place of bitterness from experiencing a repeated offense or a pattern of behavior over a period of time that leaves you feeling bitter. The second sign that it's time for you to sit down and have a contract redesign is regret. You may be feeling that, you know what, all that I did for this person, I did not get what I was expecting to get back. There was no reciprocity. There was no mutuality of sacrifice. There was no mutuality of giving. There was no mutuality of care. And now I regret, I am saddened that I invested myself into the relationship in the way that I did, because now what my return on my investment is pain. So regret is a space where people end up in because there is an expectation. Again, the key word here is expectation of mutuality of benefit. And the reality is, in our world, benefit mutuality is not always going to be set up the way that you might think it's going to be set up. You may end up in a relationship with someone who you benefit in a certain and very specific type of way, which you desire to be reciprocated to you. But that person may be giving you something completely different than what you're giving them, but it's still equally as beneficial to the relationship as the thing that you're giving. It's kind of like when you think about, and I always go back to little kids. I go back to preschool, I go back to elementary school, because what do kids do when kids, they size up each other's food? If it looks like you got two more french fries than I got, now now I'm feeling some type of way, right? So some people in relationships are keeping score, and love does not keep score. The keeping of score is what leads to regret, and the regret is coming from the fact that you've been keeping score. When we're talking about true love and true selflessness, remember that one of the core roots of conflict is selfishness. Then regret, if you're feeling regret, it may be pointing to a place where you have been operating out of a place of selfishness, but you've convinced yourself that you were doing something self-sacrificing or selfless, yet you're regretful. And then finally, the third sign is blame. Blame is a really, really big sign that there is something off in the relationship that needs to be discussed on a very high level of business. And I share this all the time, that yes, we have romance. Yes, we have feelings. Yes, we want to be skipping through a field of flowers, holding hands and smiling. But at the end of the day, when it comes down to our relationships and the value of our relationships and the necessity of our interdependence as human beings, we have got to look at these disruptions to our harmony with one another as business. We have got to look at it as the type of thing that will cause us to have a drop in the market, like our stock portfolio has dropped. This is how we need to be looking at our relationships. In fact, this afternoon, I brought my kiddo with me to a networking meeting. I met another entrepreneur through a mutual acquaintance, and I was explaining to my son, I was like, look, this is why we network. And I explained to him, your net worth is your network. And he's like, oh, I've heard the word net worth before. And I said, yeah, our relationships expand and provide us with opportunities to make more of an impact and to serve more people and to increase the influence of our business. And so you want to look at your relationships and your opportunity to find alignment and connection with other people whose businesses you can support and who can support your business. This is what the business community looks like. This is what the entrepreneur community looks like, so that we all win, because it's enough pie out here for all of us. And so blame is another indicator that we are having an issue with the value of the stock certificates of our relationship. There is an issue here where I am looking to explain the disruption in our harmony by focusing more on something that you did wrong, rather than taking ownership for my contribution to the disruption. And a lot of times, because of our pride, we are resistant to taking ownership of our contribution to the loss of harmony, because we believe we're right. the human condition by default, we think we're right. We're always right. Uh, it reminds me of the line on Scarface. I always tell the truth, even when I lie. It's like I'm always right, even when I'm wrong. And some people walk around with that attitude and bully other people into just no longer advocating for themselves because it's like you're always right. Like you never take responsibility for anything. And that can be very, very alienating and destructive to your relationship. All right. So I want to tell y'all about Ashley and Carl because their situation really illustrated what happens when there's a loss meeting of the mind. So Carl reached out to me and he was like, I am not sure our marriage is going to survive. I'm not sure our marriage is going to survive because my needs are not being met. I want to be close to my wife. I want to have sex with my wife. I don't know what her issue is. She keeps telling me the same thing over and over. I'm listening to her, I'm acknowledging her, and it's like a brick wall. And I'm over here like, well, what is a brother to do? Carl wants to get busy, and Ashley is having some struggles in this area. Excuse me. So Carl was very open to my first fleshing things out with Ashley. I was expecting that Ashley was going to have a lot to say from a wife perspective when I see this type of breakdown in the meeting of the minds where the couple once had a healthy sex life and then all of a sudden there's a disruption in the sex life and there's no real clear explanation for where the disruption is coming from. There is a lot of emotion and pain to be unpacked there. And so I asked Carl, hey, I don't want to hear your side of the story. Let me talk to Ashley first, because I imagined that there was a lot of unpacking that had to be done there. And there was. Ashley had a lot going on. Ashley was exhausted. Ashley was feeling that all Carl wanted was some booty. Like, like, hello, can we hold hands? Can you kiss me first? Like, she was looking like, where is the non-sexual connection? Where was the non-sexual contact? And she had been emphasizing that to him over several months, but all he was experiencing was like, she don't want to have sex with me. So what he began to fear, remember y'all, when there is a loss of the meeting of the minds, when this has changed, then those fears start speaking louder than the facts. I'm going to say this once again, the fears begin to speak louder than the facts. This situation had been going on for so long that Carl began to try to make sense of Ashley's behavior. Maybe she's cheating on me. Maybe she's not attracted to me anymore. Maybe she just don't want me. He was experiencing fear of rejection. He was experiencing fear of betrayal because he heard what his wife was saying, and she was saying a lot, and everything she said made sense. But at the end of the day, he's still walking away looking crazy. His wife doesn't want to have sex with him. As we continue to work with Ashley first and unpacking the emotions, unpacking the discussions that were being had, unpacking all of the different pain that was driving this issue, what we encountered was that Ashley is perimenopausal. Husbands, listen. Like I said at the beginning of this session, seasons change, people change, bodies are changing. And we, wives, as we're continuing to mature in our beauty, many of us walk through a stage in life where we feel like strangers in our own bodies. Like we don't even have a connection with ourselves. Like you will be in my face about you want to be with me. And I've lost connection with myself because my body is going through a season. And as we talked about that season, and I began to relate with her feeling of exhaustion, I began to share with her how often we see this kind of issue and why it is that things have compounded because she was not aware that this season was driving the changes she was feeling, her exhaustion. And once we got her to a place of awareness, Ashley was able to work with me to come up with a plan, right? Several things that she needs to be doing in her individual health and medical and care journey that she needs to work with her medical providers with, and other things from a wife's perspective that she can begin to do to help reconnect in that space of being with her husband. And so we worked quite extensively with supporting her in that, and all of the defenses where she was, they dissipated because of a new awareness that we were able to discover by giving her that safety to talk things through. So when I reconnected with Carl and I first listen to him and let him unpack how alienating it has been for him not to be able to touch his wife and enjoy his wife, and how frustrated he was. And even when I first contacted Ashley, I was telling her, I was like, look, this man loves you. A man who reaches out to a marriage mediator, he's not trying to abandon you, because that was the fear that began playing out in her mind. Her fear started to yell and scream, he wants to leave me, he doesn't love me, he doesn't want me anymore. And so I was reassuring her, hey, your husband is not calling a marriage mediator because he wants to leave you. His plan, his intention for you is not to abandon you. Let's go ahead and take that fear and that emotion off the table, because the facts are that when a husband is reaching out to a marriage mediator, he wants his wife, he loves his wife, and he is looking for some answers to fix this. Right? So we addressed Carl's fears, and I was able to, based on the information that we received from Ashley during our time together, that your wife loves you. She's crazy about you. She only has eyes for you. And you know what? She really misses her friend. And you can kind of hear the connection for him in the choice of language of expressing to Carl that Ashley was missing her friend, because these two were always the closest of friends. But at the point where her medical and her emotional needs were not being sufficiently cared for, and his physical needs were not being cared for, they began to see each other as the enemy, and they lost sight of their love and their friendship for one another. I shared with Carl some of my concerns that perimenopause might be one of the key culprits that are driving what he's been experiencing with his wife. And Carl got really quiet, and he was like, I didn't even think of that. He went from being here in his defensiveness all the way down to a place of 100% total compassion and support for his wife, and began talking about things that he needed to do to support her in that journey. These two were not even speaking with one another. But once we got them back to the meeting of the minds that they love each other, the meeting of the minds that they desire to figure this out, the meeting of the minds that there was nobody else involved in this. It was just having to find the right understanding and awareness so that they can see each other as friends and lovers again. This is how Carl and Ashley were able to reconnect and to build a deeper level of intimacy to continue their journey without this being about give me what I want, give me what I want. Now they're both seeing how they can each serve and support each other because they love each other. And with the meeting of the minds back in place, they have a redesigned arrangement where they are both committed and are bringing consideration to the table, things that Ashley can do to navigate the season of life that she's in, and things that Carl can do to navigate the season of life the marriage is in. So, one of the things that I learned, I found out by just chance, this connection between the legal framework that I was taught in law school, that all lawyers are taught in law school: facts, issue, rule, analysis, and conclusion. I've talked about it in other sessions of this show before, and this is what I teach in this particular book. But in the law of care, I am showing you how the legal framework, legal problem solving framework, can be used to reverse the psychological, emotional, and the logical reasoning damage that takes place in the lives of many people who have experienced trauma, particularly childhood neglect and abuse. This has been my personal journey in looking at so many things that happened to me in my childhood that I just pushed past in survival mode, that I never stopped and I took the time to deal with. And before I began practicing the techniques that I teach in the law of care, I was demanding for my husband to change. I was demanding for him to make me stop feeling the way that I felt whenever that fear of rejection would boil up inside of me, or that fear of abandonment would boil up inside of me. There was never a meeting of the minds because I had ghosts from my past. And I teach you exactly how to deal with those using the legal problem solving framework to literally rewire your thinking and your emotions so that you're caring for your side of the marriage. I want to, specifically with marriage, I want to really emphasize that a marriage is like a bank account. A lot of times we are making demands of the other person, like, because we're married, you're supposed to, you're supposed to, you're supposed to. And that's true. There are things that there's some give and take that should be taking place. There are some responsibilities and rights, right, that we all have in our relationship spaces. But in marriage, the marriage is a bank account. And when the husband takes his time to walk through the wounds of his heart and to deal with them, then it's like giving yourself $100,000 pay raise. And now you can deposit $10,000 into the marriage account now that you've given yourself a pay raise. And when the wife does the same thing and she works on her side and she deals with the ghost of her past, she deals with the patterns of how she reacts and how she responds when people have hurt her in the past and when her husband has hurt her, that rather than her looking at him and shooting daggers at him, she works on her stuff on her side. She gives herself $100,000 pay raise, and now she can deposit $10,000 into the marriage bank account. And now the marriage bank account has $20,000 that each side has been investing into. And then as you continue to grow, you continue to add that deposit so that the value of the marriage account grows. Rather than blaming each other, rather than looking at each other, rather than demanding from each other, focusing on your side of the marriage increases your value and your ability to invest back into the account of the marriage. The law of care is designed to help you do that. If you are a person who has a history, a background, some trauma in the area of abuse or neglect, like I did, this was the process that I increased my value and began making larger deposits into our marriage to end the really high level conflict and strife that we were in, and like 10-year pattern of crazy. And you reclaim your personal power, especially when there are these wounds from childhood, because you're afraid that someone else has more power than you. You're afraid this person has the power to hurt you. Well, this book is designed to teach you your personal power and to give you ownership of your thinking in a strategic way so that you can advocate for yourself without being in hypervigilance. Hypervigilance, right? Again, when you've been hurt so much over the years, especially if you have unhealed wounds from childhood, you become excitable. Like you don't even realize that you overreact. Like you on extra when you're feeling threatened or when you're feeling afraid. And this book is specifically designed to give you that strategic structure to deal with the facts. Yes, process your feelings, deal with the facts, and advocate for yourself in a way that is respectful and that is dealing with the issue that's going to help you and your sweetheart, or you and your kids, or you and your siblings get back into some type of mutuality of understanding, a meeting of the minds. And again, that doesn't always mean that you're going to necessarily agree to be on the same path with each other, but it does give you the tools you need to show up in those conversations as an adult respectfully and stand on business. So I hope this blesses and encourages you. And I look forward to having some family talk conversations with you in another week. Be blessed.
Always remember this: the destination is love, and the journey is love. And it is love that conquers all fear and transforms our world. Hey, if you were blessed by this content, please like it, share it, and subscribe. Follow us on social media at Law for Love ATL. And we bless you and thank you for all of your support.